guys? This is another episode that we are going to be talking about some fun, cool stuff. And this was probably my most difficult and stressful experience as an entrepreneur. Before we dive in, again, we appreciate everybody for listening. Click like, subscribe, share. We really, really appreciate what's happening, and we really appreciate how quickly this is getting eyeballs on. On top of that, the value we hope that we are bringing. So just like the last episode we talked about, we are going to start doing live podcasts, things of that nature. So stay tuned. If you do have questions, you have topics you want us to talk about, just send a DM, email, text, all that fun stuff. So talking today, I'm not a numbers guy, was never a numbers guy. I live on the edge, and I am all about, hey, I'll figure this out. You come into my life almost 10 years ago, and you have the skill set that I don't have, nor the interest that I don't have. And that allows this relationship to be what it is, to now having, with you being my business partner moving forward in our expansion. And a lot of the success that we've had now is because of you. So this episode is going to be interesting to hear your perspective, share some of the stories that we've been through at the early stages when things were dark. I was broke, alone mentally. I mean, we didn't really know each other well back then. We would meet at Panera, different Paneras all over the city. And, it was, David, do you have to sell your house today? Hey, how do you get rid of this? How do you downsize here? I got another collection notice. My power was shut off. My gas was shut off. My electric was shut off. So we're going to dive into the times of all that stuff that happened, and then piggyback off of where we are now to the fun of having cash and the fun of not being as stressed on top of that. But we're going to talk about cash flow, stress, and staying alive. And we have a lot of stories over the last decade. We're going to still try to keep this 35 to 40 minutes because I do like that time frame. We could probably talk about this one for days. I'll probably cry at some point through this one if it continued on because of the emotional toll that it took on me. But again, I want to just recap of a thank you to you, dude, for coming into my life at the time you did. And it's awesome because we wouldn't be here without you. And it's awesome to have you a part of this as we continue to grow. But I'm going to let you kick this one off a little bit because I know this is your world that you live in. But anybody listening, this is one of the most important conversations you're going to hear.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So cash flow, because I get these questions all the time from my clients and from anybody that talks to me. If you're having issues with cash flow, that's what you end up focusing on. If you have cash, you don't pay attention to it. You're doing what you're doing. You don't worry about it. So it's one of those weird things that you should always pay attention to it. When you don't have it, it becomes an even greater focus. And people, especially early on, because that's the sole kind of financial metric that they're focused on, they view that as an indication of success, when it's not necessarily that having cash or not having cash is indicative of you being profitable or not being profitable. Those are two different things. So if you're going to take away anything from cash flow, it's that cash flow is different from profit. They're not the same thing.
It's funny because like that, I live in the world of like, I have no cash. And then I have a ton of cash, and then I have no cash. And it's like, well, you put $250,000 into this location, and then you started this business, and there's another 50 to 100,000. But then it's like when cash is heavy, you feel like you're on top of the world. And then, when you don't have it because you're reinvesting or doing things different, whether it's you're improving your shops, buying another location, expansion, adding a different technology, adding a different product line to what we have, cash gets tight sometimes, even 10 years in. And I think that's a big thing that people need to understand too, is cash is king, cash flow is also king, but there's certain times of your endeavor that you're going to be a little bit less cash heavy. And sometimes that's okay, and that's strategic for a lot of reasons. But the biggest thing is that feeling when you see your bank account not where you're used to it being, then you're like, damn, are we failing? Does this suck? Is there something happening? And then your wires kind of go everywhere.
Yeah, and this is where projecting into the future comes into play. So a lot of people do budgets at the beginning of the year. Not a lot of people do scenario-specific projections, and then switching that from your accrual basis or profitability look to cash flow, because they're two separate things. So being able to do that, run those types of numbers, is how you can manage your cash more effectively and not get into a situation where you run out of money.
Yeah. Well, when we met, I mean, there were, for us at that time, it was 2017. I mean, there were weeks or there were months where it was like, hey, we need to hit $20,000 in sales.
Yeah.
Right. You know, or $30,000 or $7,000 or, I mean, it was such a wild ride then to where we are now. And it was such a different feeling and a different pain because I had no money and it was like, hey, if we don't sell more suits this month, people can't get paid. And I was always the last one that got paid, if I got paid at all, which typically it didn't happen at times. But it was always make sure the team was good with the cash that you have. But being able to have cash to make decisions based off of what's best for the business versus what's best off of cash is a whole different story.
Yeah. Sometimes when you're like, so debt is a good concept here. If you need money, you can go get a loan. You could put it on a credit card. You're going to end up paying interest on those things. So you're going to lose profitability in the long run. But if you absolutely need that cash now, then you don't have a lot of options. You have to potentially do that. The downside is, or the real reason the problem happened is not this week. It's 2 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. You didn't plan appropriately and now you don't have any money. So that's where you have to do what you have to do now, but the real problem wasn't now. It was weeks or months ago, or when you set up your plan or your model altogether.
Well, we didn't do budgeting in the beginning at all.
No, it was just,
hey,
you need more money.
Yeah, hey, sell more.
Sell more.
And then oftentimes you're like, hey, like you got to make more money. So stop giving your leads to your teammates, keep them for yourself so you could survive. And I was just always like, nah, it's not really our philosophy. And it just made life harder for me, but I was trying to take care of people along the way. But coming from you on the financial end, who's seeing the books and watching the blood just pour, you had a different eye than I did. That's where, from an entrepreneurial perspective, it's a happy medium between trust, you're trusting your gut, and then using numbers to dictate, hey, here's where you are. And I don't often wonder or think about it, but just because we're talking about it now, it makes me think how would have things been different had I done them differently early on? I'm sure my experience would have been drastically different. I still think we're in a great spot now. I think I loved the lessons that I learned at that stage in business, and it allowed me to get to where I am. It allowed me to start trusting you even more than ever. But it probably would have changed the dynamics in some capacity. Maybe we would have been a little more successful sooner. Maybe not. Maybe it would have been the same parallel. Who knows? We'll never know. But had I known what I know now, I would have done things differently back then. At the same time, I wouldn't have done anything differently because I love where we are.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah. So when you're projecting out, and this is where things you didn't do at the beginning, one-time cash outflows versus commitments to recurring cash outflows are going to be two separate things. If you have some extra cash and you're going to buy a new sign or something, that's going to be a one-time cash outflow. If you're going to sign a lease on a building, that's going to be a recurring cash outflow. So if you have the cash, those one-time things are usually pretty easy to determine. Well, we have the cash, we can pay for it. You might be spending cash that you're going to need in the future. That's kind of a different situation. But those recurring ones is where now you're committing to something well into the future, and you can't project with accuracy that far into the future, especially with cash flow. You might have an idea of 6 months from now. You might have a rough idea 12 months from now, but those are just ideas or estimates. Anything more than a few months into the future, unless you have a very contractual business where you know exactly, everybody signed these contracts, we know what we're going to spend, we know what we're going to bring in, and that's exactly what's going to happen. Most industries aren't like that, especially in retail. You just don't know up or down what things are going to do in a particular month. So those commitments to those recurring cash outflows is what you really want to consider and think about before you agree to them.
So, because I also like giving real world examples of things that we've been through, one thing I just made a note here is travel costs early on. I mean, you were always, dude, chill out. I mean, I was spending $50,000 a year, $70,000 a year on travel.
Yeah, it was a lot.
But at the same time, my mind was like, dude, I'm trying to build this business and I'm trying to strategically do this. I'm trying to attach myself to WWE, which is they're not in Pittsburgh all the time. So I was on a flight every Monday, wherever WWE was, I was trying to tag along. Then you have meals, you have flights, you have hotels. I mean, at that stage, dude, I couldn't even get I remember trying to get a rental car for $25 a day, and I had nothing on. My credit cards were all maxed out. I was that bozo in line that gets up to the counter. There's 10 people behind me. I hand them my credit card, gets declined. I look around like, hey, who heard that? Did anybody hear that? And then it's like, then the only option at that point was, okay, I got a couple $100 in my checking account. So then you give them your debit card. And then because you give them a debit card, you have to then provide flight information home. You're not able to rent a car without providing that if you're using a debit card versus a credit card. So it's like that all that internal chaos. But my thought process at that time, which we had a lot of confliction on, was, dude, I have to do this. This is how I'm going to build this business. Because my vision was the celebrity component was so powerful and so sexy to people who were watching it that it was going to get more eyeballs on the brand, which in turn would then bring more revenue down the road. But man, it was tough and it was very, very expensive. And then when you're on the road too, like, you know, you spend a little bit differently too, because you feel like you're on vacation, even though you're grinding and you're broke, and you just live a little bit differently. I don't know. It was very eye-opening from how do I decide, do I travel, do I not travel, do I spend this money, do I not? But to the point of what you were just talking about of the cash flow standpoint is, I could have stopped right away, pivoted the business and said, I'm only going to stay in Pittsburgh. I'm only going to focus on this market and try to grow that way. Either would have probably worked in some capacity. It wasn't the route that I chose.
Yeah, and that's where the staying alive part comes in. The closer you get to kind of that edge, the more you need to button it up. So if you literally have no money and all of your credit cards are maxed out and you can't get any more capital, you kind of back yourself into a corner. At some point, you're not going to be able to travel just because you won't have the money.
And there were seasons where that happened.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, we just can't make this trip work. Or for this month, we got to change the way we do it. And then I was notorious for, all right, we got cash flow. Cool, let's spend it now. And it was like diving right back into the to the chaos of what I believed in. So as an entrepreneur, my philosophy was, okay, cool, all good. Anytime we had extra cash, use that cash to reinvest it back into the business. My mindset was reinvesting back into the travel to keep me in front of the big name people, which then I said that kicks back and builds up the brand.
Yeah, and that's where if we could go back in time, now that you trust me, versus when we first started, there wasn't as much trust.
I didn't trust you at all back then.
You're like, what is this guy talking about?
And you were younger than me too, and like, I don't know.
I got that a lot at the time. But if we could go back in time, now we would set something up where it would be like, all right, let's build this cash projection for the month. Maybe it's $5,000, maybe it's $10,000, maybe it's 20, whatever it would be at the time. Schedule all your trips and your flights and your hotels and your car bookings around that number. That's what you want to shoot for this month. Don't just willy-nilly, this guy wants me to come here, that guy wants me to come here, I'm going to get this flight, I'm going to get that flight, I'm going to book it at the last minute. It's going to be way more than it needed to be if I would have more of a plan so you can stay within budget, and then let people know if you get towards the top of the budget for the month, just be like, yeah, I can be out there in 2 weeks, not this week.
So in theory, though, you could have been a little bit better at your stage then.
Oh.
Am I correct?
And that's built by doing. That's our process 10 years later from an accounting perspective is a lot different than it was.
And your knowledge is just different.
Yeah, a bigger knowledge base, more experience.
Yeah.
So
we were growing our businesses simultaneously. You had to have a different mindset than I do. Strategies were just different. And our relationship was just different then. And it's just a whole different world now.
Yeah. But that would be for someone that's following your philosophy, add in a little bit of let's set some controls on how much we spend, how much we commit to that particular thing in a short time window. Because cash is really all about timing.
Right.
If you're going to look at your cash today versus tomorrow, it probably is going to be different.
Yeah.
If you look at your cash flow on a report for the whole year, it might look totally fine. You brought in more money than you spent. But within the year, there might have been weeks where you're bringing in no money and it's all going out the door and you're running out. So that's where cash isn't, that's back to profit is different than cash. It just is. It's a different metric. You want to make sure you're asking the right questions when you're looking at the cash and not asking profitability questions or business model questions that don't have to do with cash flow. You still need cash flow. Cash flow is the lifeblood, but it's not necessarily indicative of success.
Yeah. So the biggest thing I would say, piggyback, and then we'll use 5,000 for the number. If you know, hey, I've got 5,000 this month, you could literally say, here's where I'm going to spend it.
Exactly.
And here's what I hope to get out of this. I'm going to take $1,000 for this. I'm going to take 500 for this. I'm going to, hey, there's an opportunity to host this event for $250, or here's $100 that I could get a ticket for this networking group, right? That is something that I firmly believe in now from a strategic landscape for any business owner in any capacity, especially new business, because that's where the dollars are just a little bit more crucial than any other time frame is. Know what the hell you're doing. Know where the money's going. I talked about it on one of the other podcasts. I had this freaking stupid fashion magazine from San Antonio, Texas, that bamboozled me out of $5,000, thinking that was going to change my life, and they're going to put this in this. They wanted to write a story on me, not realizing the story was because I was paying $5,000 to them, and then on top of the $5,000 story that was going in this high-end international fashion magazine that wasn't, was the cost to go to the event. Then it was the cost of the flight. Then it was 3 days in a hotel. And then it was the food on the road. So if I would have said, hey, here's the total budget I have for this month. Here's the total expenditures that are going to have going out for this trip alone. It probably cost me $10,000 versus what the number it's 5,000. Well, then you just forget about everything else that's associated with it. Because then maybe then you commit to the sponsorship of 5,000, but then the next month, then the travel's happening, but you booked the travel in the current month. So now you're at 8,000. It's just it's a balancing act, but you really have to know what's the opportunity cost of what situation it is. And it's not just what's the one opportunity cost. Are there other costs affiliated or associated with that experience that you need to factor in? And that's kind of where I don't want to say I suck at. We have good cash flow now, so it's okay to go with the gut a little bit. But there are more costs involved than you realize at some specific things most of the time.
Yeah, and then it just another hidden cost. If you put that on a credit card and you can't pay the credit card off that month, now you're paying interest on those expenses. So it just compounds.
Yeah, and those are the things that come into the survival mechanism. Sometimes you just, hey, this is the shit that's going to happen. It is what it is. I know, and we talked about the Square loan or whatever that was. Like, that was a how do we stay alive?
Yeah. We'll have to do a whole podcast on debt at some point. But that debt is like I don't know what a good metaphor would be. It kickstarts your cash flow for a short period of time, but you're robbing the future cash flow from it. And depending on what type of debt instrument, you could get really screwed. So you do have to watch out for that. I'm a big fan to manage cash flow of credit cards, put everything on the card, and then that gives you an idea. You can float it for 25 to 55 days, depending on your terms. Because if you charge something at the beginning of the month, you don't get the statement till the end of the month, and then you don't have to pay it till the end of the next month. So you can float it for a period of time, depending on when you charge it. So that helps you push expenses into the future and gain cash flow. You just want to be careful that you're not overcharging on the card from what you can pay for.
See, that's where I have PTSD is like, I have no debt on credit cards. The minute I check a credit, and we spend so much money on business that it's like, I have to pay it down. But my thought process is like, I don't want to see $1 on a credit card because I've been stacked with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt in survival mode. And it is such a terrible feeling. How are you going to dig out of that? How do you get out of this situation? So for me, it's like, hey, we got the cash, dude. I just don't want to see anything on there. And I don't know if there's a benefit of at this stage that I have to do it differently or not. But for people listening, it's okay to be in a spot of like, this is what I have to do. And we're doing that for the closet business right now as we scale that business. And you're handling the finances, so that makes it a lot easier. For me, I would probably just keep doing with the paid off mindset. But you, thankfully, for your skill set and your knowledge and your awareness, that allows us to operate in the growth stages or the foundational stages of the closet business.
Yeah, so that's a good example. So what we do for that, and this depending on where you are with your cash needs, you could do this weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever. It's a simple start with, here's the cash we currently have. Here is what we know is going to come out. And the reason I like credit cards is because that greatly reduces the number of things you need to worry about from a cash flow perspective. You pay the credit card once a month. That's one expense, even if there's hundreds of charges on it. So things you have to pay in cash: rent, payroll, sales tax, loan payments, your credit card payment. Make a list of all those things for the week or the month that are going to come out. How much is going to come out? What are you starting with? When are you going to run out of cash? Put dates, put them in order of when they're going to happen, and put the updated balance after they're going to be paid. And then you know when you're going to run out of cash. So you have a day of, we need to make this much money by this day to keep afloat. And then as you get a bigger cash reserve, then you could do that bi-weekly, then you could do that monthly. So you only have to just check on things. We know roughly the credit card's going to be $20,000 a month or $30,000 a month. We know payroll's roughly this. And you can project out your cash kind of in a simple, quick way. And this works personally too, if you have personal expenses. So you know, when will you run out of money? How much money do you need to make by a certain day? And it gives you an idea of what's going on.
I know we're just talking about credit cards, so we should probably end. It wasn't one of the topics we wanted to talk about, but I do think talking about the points on credit cards. I mean, we spend over $1 million plus, I don't know, 1.5 million a year on credit cards, and then there's that whole caveat of, what do you want to do with the points, or what do you want to do this? And me as a traveler, like I have a ton of credit cards because I want, I have first class with every airline because of the money we spend. And there's a lot of travel benefits that, because I travel so often, I want to be treated like gold, and I want super convenient situation and experience. Now, there's probably things that are better in the scheme of things from a 2 or 3% cash back, whatever those are. I'm going to let you speak on that behalf, but on me as a decision maker within where I live within the business is, I worked really hard to, I guess why my philosophy is to do those things is, I worked really hard to get to this point from a standpoint of, I used to travel and it used to be awful. Now I travel so much and I have a couple bucks. I want to fly first class when I can. My philosophy on something like that is, if it's an hour trip, 2-hour trip, I'm probably not going to book first class. I'm going to just hopefully to get upgraded. If it's a 3-4 hour trip and I'm not doing them all the time, I'm going to spend the extra dollars and fly first class and guarantee that versus waiting on an upgrade. Purely because traveling sucks. If I'm going to travel as often as I am, I want to have convenience in the experience of doing that. I want the nicer rental cars. And that plays into the branding that we're trying to do as well. But at the same time, you could go a different route and, hey, I don't travel for my business. I don't do this for my business. What are the best perks or thought processes on a credit card? So talk a little bit about that whole world of things.
Yeah. So first, for a credit card, you want to pay it off every month. You don't want to be paying interest. If you're paying interest, you're just losing on the situation.
And the credit cards are so high from a fee standpoint.
Yeah. You have fees. The interest is probably well over 20%. Again, if you have to do something, you have to do something. You've made a mistake or not planned well, or maybe that is just part of your plan and you factored it in from months ago. But ideally, you want to at least be getting 2% cash back. On any business card, you should be getting 2% cash back. If that's equivalent value in travel and miles or whatever extra perks you get from that, then that's just as well. But you want to make sure it's at least 2%, and you want to try and convert, like, if you can, I've got so many miles, that would cost me this much money. I've spent this much money to get those miles. How much are you roughly getting? Is it 2% or is it more? Certain credit cards will have special, if you use it here, you get more than 2%. Those are good too. You just want to be careful balancing. You at least want a foundation of a general card that can be used anywhere and always get 2%. And then on top of that, this is just my philosophy. Then on top of that, you can build, well, this one gets 5% back for meals. So we're going to use that one for all meals. And then this one gets 5% back on travel. So we're going to use that one for travel. But then you end up with more cards. It's harder to manage. You probably don't want to do that right away, especially if your credit score or your ability to get debt is limited. You want to start with that general 2% everywhere. Because a lot of times those 5% on travel only get you 1% on everything else.
Well, that's where I didn't have the luxury in the beginning because my credit was shit.
Yeah. You end up with 1 or 2 options.
So I had to just pick what's the best card to get rolling and go with it. But now I have, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 credit cards, all with different things for them, different purposes. I'm not good at doing that. Shop, hey, use meals for this.
Yeah, it's hard to remember. So
Right.
That's why that general 2% everywhere, you kind of just mostly win.
Yeah. And people, from conversations you and I have had and numbers that we've crunched, like you really don't get that much back for using credit cards. People think you get a ton, but in the scheme of things, credit cards companies are doing pretty damn well for themselves.
Yeah, it's people call it found money because it's not something you're thinking about, and then you go look and be like, oh, look at all these points I have, or look at all this cash back I have that you just weren't factoring in. But really, it's 2% back. So even if someone charged you a 3% fee, the way the math works, you're paying 0.94% of a fee because you pay 3% more, but you get 2% back, so you end up paying 0.94% more on the situation. So again, if you have to use a card for something, even if they're going to charge you that fee, it's a little less than you think. But 2%, you figure if you spend $100,000 on a credit card in a year, 2% is $2,000.
Right.
So it's like not that in the grand scheme of things. It's helpful. It's nice. You should definitely do it. But if someone's going to charge you 3% for everything and you're only getting 2% back, you might want to reconsider. Maybe you don't pay that particular thing with a credit card because you are paying about 1% more for that particular thing.
In different stages of business, I would recommend you think about different things at different times. What I mean by that is, I took a note here, small percentages are large numbers at certain stages in business. And even when we're going over the numbers and every month we review our P&L statements, it's like, okay, cool. How much did we spend on this? How much did we spend on this? Okay, tailoring is a little bit higher this month. Travel's a little higher this month. If we could shave 1% or 2 or 3 off of what we're doing at this stage, they're large numbers. And then you have to make that decision of, and we have this conversation all the time. Hey, is it worth changing this? You can add another $20,000 to $30,000 in your pocket at the end of the year. Or is the convenience of that decision or the want of that decision really weighing into things or not? So for me, there are often times where I could stop going to Starbucks every day and stop spending $20 a day on that or doing this. But at the end of the day, if I spend an extra $10,000 to $20,000 on little stuff like that, I don't care because of the convenience I have in my life, or I just enjoy that process, right? At the beginning stages of like business, it's holy shit, what are you doing? You shouldn't be spending that type of money on things. So you have to just understand where you are as a business and an entrepreneur, and understand the timing to have these different philosophies. Not every thought is worth your thought at that time in business. And I think you may disagree, I don't know, but I feel like that's a pretty fair, priorities are different at different stages.
I would agree with that. And how specific you get into it is, it's not even necessarily stages, but like you're saying, if you heavily invested in something and your cash is low right now, that might be a time where you start skipping Starbucks for a couple weeks.
See, my philosophy is I'm just going to sell more this month, and then but that's really what it comes down to. Like that's
your choice.
Yeah. That is the difference between business people and entrepreneurs, or just people in general. That's okay for me and that's okay for you. Your philosophy is not right. My philosophy is not right. That's how I prefer to live my business, or live my life through business and everything else. And I want people to understand that too. It's like, you could have another X amount of dollars a year, but if you don't care because you like certain things, cool. Somebody who's a heavy conscious financial person will say, you're crazy.
Well, my thing would be, make sure you're consciously making the choice with accurate information. Don't just be assuming you're spending this much money on Starbucks, because most of the time people assume low. It's like, oh, I can't be spending that much money. If you actually add up, go through your credit card statements and your bank statements and add up all the Starbucks, see what that number really is, then decide if that is worth it to you. I think that's a fine thing to do. I might disagree with your decision, but at least you're making a conscious decision. I think a lot of people, especially early on, they don't have any data, so they're just like, well, I don't know. I don't know why I don't have any. I get that question all the time. I don't know why don't have any money. I don't know. Where's all the money going?
I am the type of person where I don't want to know that information. I don't want to know, because I am okay with this. And I probably would be shocked with the amount of money that I waste on things. $5 here, $20 here. Those things genuinely add up. Especially, I saw something the other day, like, what was the number? Like $27 a day you spend is equivalent, or maybe it was $17. I forget the number. It was equivalent to like $10,800. And then if you invest that money instead of spending that money, by the time from 20 years old, it'd be $4.5 million or something.
Yeah,
that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, little things add up, especially over long periods of time. So that's something to consider. But you just making the conscious decision and keeping an eye on where you're spending your money. Because if you're someone and you know what your rough hourly rate is, like attorneys are easy examples. If they're billing out $400 an hour and they are going to pay someone $200 an hour to come fix something at their house or whatever, they're still making money. That makes sense. But if you know as a person, maybe you make $50 an hour and you're going to pay someone to come do something that you could do, but you're deciding not to do for $100 an hour, now you're losing out on that situation. So I think there is a way to decide early on in business, if you're making less per hour just on average, you're going to want to do more things yourself because it's going to be costly for you. But as you get a more profitable situation going and you're making more money per hour, then it doesn't make sense for you to like cut your grass if someone's going to charge you $50 an hour to do that.
And then you also have to decide, same scenarios, if you're making $50 an hour and it's $100 at whatever the service is, and you're losing 50 on it, you have to then make that conscious decision of, is there value in that for you?
Yeah, you might still want to, or maybe you can't do the thing, or like physically, or you don't have the knowledge to do it. Those are different situations. But if it's something like you could do it, you're deciding not to. You could make yourself coffee in the morning, but you're deciding to go to Starbucks. Is that saving you time? Are you able to make that up? Or are you willing to, I think as a society, there's a lot of people these days making a lot of decisions that the society 30 years ago wouldn't make as far as spending money in their time and how things are happening.
Yeah.
And that's contributing to the economic situation, potentially, in my opinion.
So like the whole stress standpoint and clarity standpoint on business, this is why mapping your financial situation out is so crucial, because again, cash flow, stress, staying alive. Stress and staying alive when you're in that spot trying to figure things out are very tough to deal with, because then you potentially will make decisions that aren't the best or the healthiest because you're trying to stay alive. And then you're often making decisions, on the fly. And that's something that I just used my gut a lot in the beginning without using a lot of data. I really do encourage people to pay attention to those things. As much as you believe in what you're doing, as much as you believe that you can accomplish something, try to always pair that with data, because there's a reason analytics and data will always be around, and they help the most successful people make decisions. Whether you're a large business or a small business, utilize what resources you have and what data you have to really try to step back and say, can I do this? Is it worth this? Can I accomplish this? Because it will then take you from the stress to staying alive, and maybe it eliminates the staying alive phase, and now you're just dealing with some stress. That's a whole different experience as well.
Yeah, and if you have a map, it can be less stressful if you know, yeah, we're going to get down to $10 in the bank account on this day, but by the end of the month, we'll be right back up to where we want to be. And it's just, that could be part of your plan. And if you know that and you mapped it out, it's a lot less stressful than if one day you look at your bank account and you're like, there's only $10 in here. What the hell's happening?
Yeah, that's a shitty spot to be in.
Yeah, but if you know, if you want to be super efficient, you get the bank account right down to zero, and then it goes right back up, and you have all of your cash invested and making you money. That's in a perfect world, what would happen?
Yeah, and you don't have, in the beginning as well, though, you don't have the rainy day fund, right? So that's the scary part about, hey, my cash is down to zero. I know this is going to come, blah, 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 popping. But what about when that unexpected things happen? What about whenever you get a flat tire, or you have whatever for the business? There's a leak in the roof in your business, and then all of a sudden you have to fix this or that, or God forbid somebody breaks a window at your business. And these are just interesting examples, but it's the real life, real world scenarios.
Yeah, as soon as you can, build up a cash reserve, because that helps with the stress. That helps. You don't have to look at it every single day. You can look at it once a week, every 2 weeks, because you have this cash reserve. You can just move money over. That's where, back to the travel example that we were talking about from 2017, if you just took 2 weeks off of traveling and used half that money to build up your reserve, now you have a reserve. It's people with cash flow, it's all about the time you're talking about. If you take a month off of spending a lot of money, now you have a month extra of money. You don't have to do it forever. It's not, you're not going to run your business that way forever. You're not going to live your life that way forever. It's just for a short period of time. suck it up, and then you have some extra cash. Skip the Starbucks for a week. Now you have some extra cash. Put that aside. Don't spend it. And now you have a reserve.
I think one of the most accomplished feelings for me was when it started to become a game of how much money can I save? And I started looking at things differently. We opened up a secondary account within David Allen Clothing. One, because we give the wire information out a little bit, so we wanted to make sure nobody could totally rob us. We try to keep our main account a little bit lower. But I remember like 2 years ago, wow, there's this amount of money in there. Okay, can I get more? Can I save this up? Can I add whatever? That became so much fun for me from a like, wow. And then I started living my life a little bit differently. I was like, damn, I don't want to spend it on this. And I became more, once I started getting cash, I started becoming more protective of cash. And that was kind of an aha moment of me, because I never, for 8 years, never lived my life that way. And then it became, okay, cool, this is now a game. And then I remember, man, like having money in there was like, dude, like I'm good for the year. I'm good for a year and a half, 2 years. And if nothing happened, okay. So then it's like, wow, you could really see, then boom, stress is gone completely. So now the stress that you're having with business it's all welcomed and warranted, because they're business stress, and that's it. When you have business stress on top of financial stress, that's when it becomes just dangerous.
Yeah, you make irrational decisions. But the cash reserve, some people ask how many months or weeks or years of cash reserves should you have in an ideal world? There's kind of competing ideas since the pandemic, because that's when a lot of people realized, oh, this like only having a month's cash isn't necessarily good in a situation where you're closed for 6 months or 3 months. So some people are stretching that out a little bit more. Maybe you want 3, maybe you want 6 months of operating cash flow or minimal operating cash flow. So the way you run your business now, if things get really bad, you would cut a lot of things if you had to. And what's that cash flow for that period of time look like? And that's what you can set aside. Get a money market account, you make some interest on it while it's just sitting there.
So kind of wrapping up this episode, this is one of those like, hey, if you're listening, there's probably a lot more people want to dive into this situation, because getting great advice from you and your knowledge in business. So I think this is very helpful for a lot of people listening. But there's probably a lot more layers that we can dive into, which we will as we continue coming up with topics that we want to discuss. It will certainly help us provide more of that information to people. But again, if anybody's listening that wants us to dive into more of these, just message us, because again, we're trying to highlight as much as we possibly can as we sit down and discuss the things that we're trying to talk about. We will organically dive into these. But if there's something that, hey, we should have dove more into, debt instruments, or how do you collect? We didn't really talk about collecting AR as much. So there's things of that nature that we could dive into, delaying paying, delaying costs of things, all that other stuff. So solid episode, man. This was a fun one. I definitely want to talk about more of the staying alive mentality. So we'll probably do an episode specifically on that, maybe even the stress, and maybe those will be a combined episode. But again, thanks for listening, guys. Share, post, tag, comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we certainly appreciate all the constant support. Thanks, guys.